Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. Welcome to another episode of Her Thoughts here on Imam Hussein TV. First of all, congratulations to everyone on the birth anniversary of our second Holy Imam, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, the grandson of the Holy Prophet, one of the leaders of the youth of paradise. Today our topic is how to prepare for the afterlife and how to remember death and make that motivate us to prepare for the afterlife. I have with us our wonderful co-host, Sister Zahra, Sister Fatima, Sister Sayyida. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
As Mawlid Imam Hassan alayhi salam. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of the topic, I just want to ask you guys maybe one thing about Imam Hassan that really sticks to you, or something, something that reminds you of him in a positive light.
I think for me it's his loyalty. We know Imam had a very caring nature. He's an Imam where we often forget to remember Imam Hassan. And we shouldn't do that because, like you said, he is one of the youth of paradise. For me, his loyalty and his generosity and his humbleness, and he was a very kind-natured Imam. And his akhlaq. So I think we've spoken about this in previous episodes, where akhlaq is going to have such a strong, heavy weighting on the Day of Judgment. So learning from his akhlaq can take us so far.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's Imam Hassan, what really stands out is really, I think, loyalty and especially brotherhood. And I always tell this to my kids as well, because we have a Hussein Abbas, I'm like, we should have a Hassan as well. And it's quite sad, I think, as a community we forget Imam al-Hassan a lot. He is the forgotten Imam. When we see the wiladat of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, there's huge celebrations, but when it comes to Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, there's very, very little that is known or even celebrated within our centres. So I think there's a lot more that we can learn about Imam al-Hassan, and I think it's it's good to do programs like this where we remember him, we bring his name in our remembrance, so that we do not forget when it's his birth or even forget his presence.
Especially, I think, because we know that we are restricted in going to his grave, Jannat al-Baqi. We are restricted to going there. So I think, in essence, we should be making that extra effort to remember him, and just how we bring Imam Zaman alive into our homes, we should bring all our Imams, but particularly I think Imam Hassan, because like we said, he is the forgotten Imam, and he shouldn't be, because he is the older brother of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and the older brother of Hazrat Abbas, and so we owe it to him, and we owe it to ourselves to remember him more.
Absolutely. Linking Imam Hassan to the topic that we have at hand today, which is how to prepare for the akhirah, how to prepare for the afterlife. My next question to you guys was going to be, what acts are recommended for us in order to secure a positive and a fruitful and a beautiful afterlife? And one of the titles of Imam Hassan alayhi salam is Kareem Ahlul Bayt. He was known for his generosity. I think twice in his life he gave away all his wealth, and still he kept giving, and this is how he got this title. So one of the acts that comes to my mind when it comes to Husn al-Aqibah, or securing a good afterlife, is giving sadaqah, giving charity, helping those in need, especially when they haven't asked for it. So what other acts and what things can we do to help ourselves in the next life?
I think to remember the hereafter, a very important aspect is visiting the graves, and it's very... the thing is, we are prevented from visiting Imam al-Hassan's grave, and visiting the grave really does remind a human being of how close death is, because oftentimes we live in this world, and even in the words of Imam Ali, we get so how do you say, attached to this world, the embellishments of this world, that we forget the hereafter. And in reality, death, they say that when death comes, you feel like your life is like a blink of an eye. And just thinking back to when we were kids until now, it really does feel like a blink of an eye. Absolutely. I was telling my husband yesterday, I was like, it feels like, since we've got married, it's like a blink of the eye. And here we have kids that my son is up to here now to me, And I'm thinking, when did this happen?
Yeah.
And that is life. It happens so, so fast. And we feel like we're going to live in this world forever.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you feel that way, life really does begin to, how can I say this? It begins to deceive you.
Yeah.
And you feel like you are untouchable and you can do whatever you want. But really visiting the graves really reminds someone that death is really near, and we need to prepare for the hereafter. I think especially now in the time of COVID and the time of the pandemic, so many people have passed away, and it really people that were absolutely healthy before and overnight have catch COVID. Even people in our mosque, in our local mosque, they were absolutely healthy. They catch COVID and they died. So this whole preparing for the hereafter, death can knock on our door tomorrow. It can knock on our door anytime, and many of us may not be prepared for it.
Yeah, it knows no age. So you can people usually associate death with the elderly, but especially through COVID, like you said, it's proved that it's got nothing to do with your age. You can be young, you could be old. It kind of reminds me of the hadith by Imam Ali alayhi salam, where he says, live your life like you are living forever, and think of your akhirah like you will die tomorrow. But I feel like we struggle to find that balance. We live our lives like we will live forever. But we kind of forget the death aspect.
And we're told, remember death continuously during the day. And I think now, I don't know whether it's myself or I'm seeing more and more young people in our community passing away. It may be through illness, it could be through sudden death as well. And we know that these are some of the signs of the akhirat as well. And something that you said about time moving fast, we also know that when the akhir zamana, so the end of time comes, the time will, as if you blink and it's been a year. So time will move very, very fast as the 12th Imam reappears. And you're talking about sadaqah. Sadaqah is not just money. So often when people can't give sadaqah, you can give sadaqah in so many different forms. We're talking about Imam's generosity. So even, for example, giving your time is sadaqah. Giving your knowledge is sadaqah. Teaching the youth is sadaqah. Those who sit on the pulpit, on the mimbar, that is a form of sadaqah as well. And sadaqah jariyah is so important because that's the sadaqah that's going to benefit us when we pass away, and that's the sadaqah that will continuously be with us. So even if you instill the love of the Ahlul Bayt into somebody's heart, that can be taken as sadaqah jariyah. If you teach somebody to read Quran, and to teach somebody to read Quran has such a high emphasis in Islam, that person will then carry on reciting Quran. That person will hopefully teach somebody else. There are so many different forms of sadaqah jariyah in Islam that we are spoilt for choice, actually. And there's no excuse not to do it as well. And we learn from Imam Hassan.
Something beautiful about a religion is you could do something like like you said, teach someone Quran, but then your rewards will continue even though you pass away, because that person teaches their child, or teaches an elderly, or teaches someone else, and it keeps going, and your rewards multiply, and it keeps adding on, and that person also gets added on rewards, which is lovely.
One hadith of Imam Hassan that is really relevant right now, I think, is when he says, a believer is the person who doesn't want to be in any other situation than the one that Allah has chosen for him. And I think that's so important to remember, because sometimes we forget that whatever situation we're in, there is always an opportunity to do something. And I think it's so important to grab opportunities. Just if there's anything where you can serve the Ahlul Bayt, if there's anything where you can do something in the service of Islam, just say yes, grab the opportunity, because like Imam Ali says, opportunities are like clouds. They're quick to pass by and very slow to return. So,
I mean, even simple things like COVID has taught us the responsibility upon all of us to look out for our family members, to look out for our community members, our neighbours, to ask after them. And that's also a form of sadaqah. Just simple things like ringing up your family. Are you okay? Do you need any help? Do you need help with shopping? And Sila Rahim is something that is emphasised time and time again in Islam. Look after your blood relatives, because we know that can have that can prolong your life, and the opposite can have detrimental effects. So a simple thing like looking after your family, asking after community members, neighbours, is also a form of sadaqah as well.
Definitely. One of the things that we're told very often is in the afterlife, on the Day of Judgment, one of the almost things on the checklist before we enter paradise is salah. And that will be kind of almost be a deciding factor. Like if your salah is accepted, then everything else is most likely accepted. So number one, how important is it that we really, really focus on salah? Because sometimes we'll kind of be like, oh, but I want to do this mustahabbat and I want to do this and I want to go here, when our salah is not locked down just yet. And how can we actually, motivate ourselves to work on our salah and perfect it?
Definitely, I think reflecting, what the beautiful thing about salah is the positions, and putting our head on the ground is a reminder of what we came from and what we're returning to, and that submission. And I think the acts of prayer itself is beautiful, and it's a reminder to really humble ourselves. I think as humans we become very arrogant walking on this earth, and the simple act of praying is a reminder of where we're really destined to end up. Salah, like you said, as well as reading Quran. The Quran is all actions that will speak on our behalf on the Day of Judgment, and that will account for us. So I think in general we need to really begin to account ourselves before we are accounted on a Day of Judgment. We don't really, I think as humans, we don't reflect on the hereafter as much as we should. The hereafter is where we're destined to be, and people live on this earth as if they're going to live on this earth forever. So just like many of us will put so much energy, we'll stay up all night to finish our essay, to revise for an exam. We don't mind staying up because we have that test to do. So we'll put so much energy into it to build our life in this world.
Yeah.
Likewise, we should build our life in the hereafter. And the way of doing that is through prayer, through worship, through supplications, through our actions. And just like, the beautiful quote in the Quran, it says, Rabbi ibn li baytan fil jannah, build me a house in paradise. We want houses here, we want to own so much here, but we want to own so much in hereafter as well. And we sometimes forget that simple concept. We're not here forever. This is just a journey. And we could be here today, we could pass away before this episode even goes to broadcast. That's how fragile life is, and we forget that, and we don't build for the hereafter. I remember, we done a show about for a charity. I don't know if I can mention the charity's name, but for a charity we were raising money, and we said, we have all this money, but we cannot take that with us to the hereafter. The only way it's going to come with us is through good deeds. So when we give towards charity, that in essence we will see the money, and we'll see that in the hereafter. We could own so much in this world, we're not going to get it in the hereafter unless we kind of do that transaction and do good. So we have to always keep that in our mind, that this is a journey, just like we're leaving, just like our grandparents have come and gone, many of our parents have come and gone, we're also going as well, and our kids and the next generation are to follow as well, or you never know which way around it could happen. SubhanAllah.
You're talking about salah, and we know in Islam, whether you take the roots of Islam or the pillars of Islam, the first one is salah. Even on top of fasting is salah. And that's a basic thing that you teach your children before they become baligh. How do you pray your namaz? How do you do your wudu? How do you purify yourself? Because ultimately you're facing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us namaz to pray, specific namazes at specific times, specific rak'ah, because He knows this is good for us. So as a human being, Allah doesn't need our namaz, but we need that namaz in order to gain closeness to Him. And I think there's a hadith that tells us that the intercession of our imams will not be with us unless we pray our namaz as well. So we always say, as Shia, we always long for the intercession of our beloved 14 Masumeen, but we're not going to get that until we at least do the wajib namaz. And that's why it's so important. And we're told in the hadith is, pray your namaz as if it's your last namaz. Live your day as if it's your last day. And I myself, when I speak, I want to be able to rectify it. So we pray namaz, but I want to gain concentration in my namaz, so much so that nothing can deter your concentration. And we know that the only time you can break your namaz is if it's a life and death situation. Whereas when you're praying your namaz, so many different thoughts come into your mind. I've forgotten to do this, I've got to do that. And it shouldn't be like that. You're talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just you and Imam. I was reading something about Imam Ali alayhi salam, and it was in the book, and it was saying that when Imam Ali used to pray, he used to stand so still, so rigid, because it was just him and Allah, that nothing would deter him from that namaz. And we have an example of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, that his namaz and how much he used to do sujood, that's why he's called Imam Sajjad, because of his title. We need to try and build our lives like the Imams, and we have perfect examples of our Imams. We've got these perfect characteristics. Like I said, there is no excuse not to take back lessons from each Imam and implement that into our daily lives, and also into the lives of our children. Our children learn from us. We are their examples, just like the Imams are examples for us. We are also the examples for our children, and they mimic whatever you do. So if they see you not praying namaz, or if they see you not praying namaz on time, I would hope that they would question you. Why are you not doing that? Because it gets them thinking as well, and at least you know that something's gone wrong here.
Yeah, absolutely. Just backtracking slightly to what you mentioned, Zahra, about visiting graves, remembering death. I feel like now, especially when we live in a society that's becoming increasingly secular, the same way that, for example, marriage is now often seen as like the settling down when you're bored of life and you want to settle down and you don't want to accomplish anything any further. The same way death, because we live in a very secular society, it's almost seen as the end point for everything. So increasingly it's seen as such a negative thing that people don't like to talk about it, and people don't like to remember it. Whereas if you look at it through the lens of Islam, and you look at it in the way that the Ahlul Bayt have told us about it, not to sound extreme or anything like that, but they've actually made it sound like such a positive thing, and it can be such a positive thing if you've lived your life in a certain way and if you've prepared well for it. So I think it's so important to actually read about death and what Islam and what the Ahlul Bayt have said about it, rather than just kind of accept it as this notion that's thrown about like, morbid and negative, and it's the end of everything and things like that.
I think this is a perception that we need to try and change, and we need to try and get out of, because another course which I've taken is a death course. So learning about what happens in Barzakh, learning about what happens when you are passing away, the different stages of Sakrat al-Maut, what happens in the afterlife, what happens on the Day of Judgment. And we are told constantly to remember death daily and have your coffin ready as well. And I know when you say this to people, it's something that is looked upon in a negative light, or that people get scared talking about it. But we're told to keep our coffin ready, and because essentially that's the dress that we're going to be waking up with in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just like when we go to a wedding, we want to wear our best dress and we want to look nice. That's the garment that we're going to wake up with on the Day of Judgment. So why not prepare that garment so that you can stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and feel happy with what you're wearing? And we are told there's so many hadith that tell us, writing Surah Yasin or Joshan Kabir, Joshan Saghir on your coffin protects you in your grave. And none of us are infallible. So I think we need to start from now. And just like you were saying, Zahra, COVID is an eye-opener for everyone. Death can come knocking on anybody's door at any time. Make the preparation now, as you would do in any normal exam.
Absolutely.
Yeah, make yourself aware of it.
Yeah.
I mean, since my grandfather passed away 4 years ago, and the topic of death has become so casual amongst us as a family. So I don't know if I should say this, but sometimes we'd be like, oh, I would want you to write this on my tombstone. I want my kathan to be like this. And it kind of makes us more aware of, there is a chance that we could die tomorrow. Absolutely. Like I went to visit my granddad a few days ago actually, and I was talking to my cousin about this, and he was saying, you better recite Fatiha for me, you better do this, and you need to do this for my Fatiha. It's just a bit of an eye-opener. It kind of permanently sinks in your mind, like, okay, there is a chance that I could, you know, die, and I should be preparing for my afterlife.
Definitely.
I mean, I've already started, and I know to some people this may sound morbid, but I've already started collecting things that I want to have with me in my coffin. For example, the tasbih or the aqiq or the piece of cloth that I've wiped across the zariya, every ziyarat I've gone through. And I know that that's going to be my shifa because we all need it.
Yeah,
I probably need it more than everyone here, but we all need shifa of our imams. And I think start collecting little bits from now.
Definitely.
Even back to the salah point, I went to one of my friend's house and she had a turba the size like this big, and I was like, oh my god, why do you have such a big turba? And she was like, because when I pray on this, and like they put it in my grave with me, and then in the hereafter it would be like a shahid for me that I prayed this much and I did.
Or the musalla that you pray on, or the namaz chadar. Even we're told that when you go for Hajj, the ihram that you wear can be part of your coffin as well. So there's so much emphasis on these little things.
Definitely. Even when you hear stories about like scholars or people who have passed away, I remember hearing a story about a scholar who I think like he was in his last days and he was on his deathbed, and one of his students went to visit him, and like one of the things that was very well known about the scholar is he used to visit Imam al-Rida like a lot. So I think his student asked him, you know, how many times have you visited? He said, I've been to visit Imam al-Rida 63 times. And then soon after he passed away, and one of his students actually saw him in a dream, and he looked so well, and he looked like, you know, he was chilling basically. And his student said, oh my God, like you look so well, you're in such a good state, what happened? He was like, well, on the first night in my grave, Imam al-Rida visited me 63 times. Wow. And when I heard that, I was like, okay, I need to go on ziyarah way more often. But it's these things, like when you read about death, when you read about like, there is a link between this life and the afterlife, there's no denying that, but the society we live in, it's like there's death and then there's like a line or a full stop and a pause, and then no one likes to talk about what comes after.
That's the thing, it's the way that society perceives death as if the end, and that's why a lot of people are scared of death. They're scared of dying, they're scared of losing loved ones. I remember a sister messaged me recently, she said, how do I cope with the loss of a loved one? And it was like, she was like, oh, they're gone. And I was like, that's like, try not to think about it. They're not gone. It's a journey, you know. Then they will never go. They're always alive. They are alive. It's the spirit, it's the body that dies. And I think we need to, as a society, we need to change the way that we perceive death. I remember even when I was giving birth to my kids, I think there's also a very negative connotation attached to labour, as if it's a very scary process, and you know, you're going through this. And I was like, and it's just changing that you know, mindset that made it so much easier. Birthing 3 children is, I really believe labour is 90% mental and probably 10% physical, but there is such a negative connotations to it, and it's like a scary process. And the same thing about death. It's a journey, and a lot of people that died are probably better off than what they were in this world. And our loved ones, they're not gone, they're not dead. And I remember my mother lost both her parents when she was about 23 years old. And I was having this conversation with her. I was like, how do you feel like you've lost your parents when you were 23? And she goes, because they're not gone. Like having that in your mind, that they're not gone, they're just gone on a journey, and we're all going to follow as well. So we need to change the conversation, and we need to change the way that we perceive death. And I think that will make it so much easier to prepare, number one, and to make it easier when we do go through losing a loved one, because all of us will go through a period in life, whether we have or not, where we will lose someone very, very close to us, and we'll have to deal with that. So it's about preparing our mindset for that before it happens.
Definitely. One thing that really sticks with me is the Ahlul Bayt have told us that when we are resurrected, we were resurrected in the same state that we died in. So if you, for example, if you're fortunate enough to die during Salah, you'll also be raised in the state of Salah. And that's kind of my 2 cents at the end of the show, but we've got a few minutes left, so I just wanted to get your closing thoughts, and what kind of sticks out to you as if you had like one takeaway, one thing that you really want to implement in preparation for the Akhirah, what would it be?
I think, I just want to, what you said about ziyarat and visiting the imams, but I think especially in this situation that we're in, we can't visit our holy imams, but we can remember them daily. We can send our salams to them daily, and they reply, we just can't hear them.
Yeah.
So even simple things like that will bring you closer to Imam, and hopefully Imam will visit us when in our time of need as well. If we can't physically go to him, he'll come to us and reply to our salam.
I think rather than seeing death as such a scary thing, acknowledging that it is another stage in our life that we will pass through, and believe that, hopefully with the services that we've given towards the Ahlul Bayt, it will be something that will stand for us. So like he said, hopefully we will get those visits in our grave as well, inshallah. And instead of fearing death, maybe working to better ourselves, to be able to, know that we have a good, secure place in our grave and in the akhirah, inshallah.
As the narrations constantly say, it says, Ya Allah, take my soul when I am in the best position. And I think as humans, we go through spiritual highs and spiritual lows. There are times where you're perhaps sinning more than other times, or your belief is stronger than other times. And I think in preparation for death, our spiritual highs should be more than our spiritual lows. So if, God forbid, death does come knocking at our door, we are at our best. And I think I would leave this, show with saying this to end it off. We should always have in our mind, if death came tomorrow, are we ready? If we're not, immediately what to change, and we need to change those so that if death does come, we are in the best position to leave this world. Because we know people, we know stories that people have lived their whole life worshipping Allah, being obedient, and then their last moments is when they leave this world as a sinful individual. And there's some people, it's the reverse as well. So we should always make sure we are at our spiritual high, so that if death does come at any time, we are prepared.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for an amazing show as always. It's gone by so quickly. Thank you to all our viewers for tuning in. Inshallah, we hope you have a great time celebrating the Mawlid of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. It's been a tough year for all of us. I'm sure there's not a single one of us who doesn't know someone who lost their life to COVID. So inshallah, we remember them in our prayers as well with the Surah Al-Fatiha. We'll see you inshallah in the next episode of Her Thoughts. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.